Most people think of the holidays as a time for warmth and family. But when the snow starts falling and the streets go quiet, that isolation can turn terrifying very quickly. Tonight, I am going to share 3 true horror stories that will make you think twice about being home alone this winter. You might want to double-check that your front door is locked. Story 1. This happened 3 years ago, during my junior year of college. I was broke and looking for quick cash, so when one of my professors asked if I could house sit for him over the winter break, I said yes immediately. He lived in a massive modern house about 30 minutes outside of town. It was backed right up against a dense forest, the kind of place that is beautiful during the day but feels like a fishbowl at night because of all the floor-to-ceiling windows. The first 2 nights were fine. I mostly just watched movies and studied. But on the 3rd night, a heavy snowstorm hit. By 10 p.m., the wind was howling so loud it shook the window frames. I was in the living room scrolling on my phone when the motion sensor floodlight in the backyard clicked on. I froze. The light only triggered if something big moved out there, like a deer or a bear. I walked over to the sliding glass door and peered out. The snow was falling so thick it was like a white curtain. I couldn't see anything, so I assumed it was just the wind blowing a branch. I sat back down. About 20 minutes later, the light clicked off. Then, immediately, it clicked back on again. This time, I got a bad feeling in my stomach. I went back to the glass and cupped my hands around my eyes to block the reflection. My heart dropped. There were fresh footprints in the snow. They started from the edge of the woods and walked in a straight line, right up to the glass door I was standing in front of, but there were no footprints leading away. Whoever made them was standing directly against the wall of the house, in the blind spot just to my left. I slowly backed away from the door, trying not to make a sound. As I stepped back, the handle on the sliding door slowly turned down. It was locked, but the metal mechanism clicked loudly in the silence. Then, a heavy fist pounded on the glass. Thump, thump, thump. I didn't wait to see who it was. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and sprinted upstairs to the master bedroom. I locked the door and dialed 911. I was whispering, terrified that they would hear me. The dispatcher told me officers were on the way, but because of the storm, it would take time. For the next 15 minutes, I listened to the sounds of someone walking around the perimeter of the house below me. They were testing every single window and door, looking for a way in. Eventually, I saw blue lights flashing through the bedroom window. The police searched the property, but the person was gone. However, they found something that made me sick. In the snow, the footprints didn't just come from the woods, they circled the entire house. The officer told me that based on the amount of snow filling the tracks, the person had been standing outside watching me for at least an hour before the motion light finally caught them. I didn't stay the rest of the week. I drove back to my dorm that night, even in the blizzard. Story 2. Working retail during the holidays is a nightmare, but the worst shift I ever worked wasn't because of rude customers or long lines. It was because of what happened after the doors were locked. I was 22, working as a shift manager at a clothing store in the local mall. It was December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas. The mall had extended hours, so we didn't close until 11 p.m. By the time I locked the front gate, the mall was practically a ghost town. My 2 co-workers left immediately to catch the last bus, leaving me alone to count the registers and do a final sweep of the floor. It was about 11:30 when I started checking the dressing rooms. We had a policy to check every stall because sometimes teenagers would hide in there to try and stay in the mall overnight. The dressing room area was in the back corner of the store, and the lights were on a motion sensor. As I walked in, the lights flickered on with a loud buzz. I walked down the row. "Hello? Store's closed," I called out. Empty, empty, empty. Then I got to the last stall. The door was pulled shut, but not latched. I knocked on the wood. "Anyone in there?" Silence. I sighed, assuming someone had just left a pile of clothes on the floor. I pushed the door open. It wasn't clothes. There was a man standing in the corner of the stall. He was facing the wall, pressing his forehead directly against the mirror. He was wearing a heavy winter coat that looked dirty, and he was completely still. I gasped and took a step back. "Sir, the store is closed. You have to leave." He didn't move. He didn't even breathe. "Sir?" I said, my voice shaking. Slowly, he turned his head. He didn't turn his body, just his neck, craning it around to look at me. His eyes were wide open, unblinking, and he was smiling. But it wasn't a friendly smile. It was wide, strained, and aggressive. "I know," he whispered. Then he lunged at me. I screamed and slammed the stall door in his face. I heard his body hit the wood with a heavy thud. I didn't wait. I turned and sprinted toward the front of the store. Behind me, I heard the stall door crash open and heavy boots stomping on the tile floor. I fumbled with my keys at the front gate, my hands shaking so bad I dropped them. I looked back. The man was running down the main aisle, knocking over racks of clothes as he came. I grabbed the keys, jammed the right one into the electronic switch, and the metal gate began to roll up. It was agonizingly slow. I rolled under it before it was even 2 feet off the ground and scrambled out into the mall concourse. I ran straight to the night security desk. By the time the guards got back to my store, the man was gone. He had smashed through the emergency exit in the back stockroom, setting off the silent alarm. When we reviewed the security footage later, we saw how he got in. He hadn't walked in during business hours. He had army crawled in through the back delivery dock when a shipment arrived earlier that day. He had been hiding in that dressing room for 6 hours, just waiting for the store to empty out. Story 3. I have always loved the idea of a white Christmas, so last year I decided to rent a remote cabin in the mountains of Colorado for a solo getaway. I wanted to disconnect from work, turn off my phone, and just read by a fire. The cabin was beautiful, sitting at the end of a long, single-lane dirt road that was already covered in about 6 inches of snow when I arrived. The owner had left a key in a lockbox for me. The first night was peaceful, but the second day, I noticed something strange. I had gone out for a hike, and when I came back, the back door was slightly ajar. I knew for a fact I had locked it. I did a quick walk through of the rooms, checking the closets and under the bed. Nothing. I convinced myself the wind had just blown it open and that the latch was faulty. That night, a blizzard rolled in. The temperature dropped to 10 degrees below zero. I was sitting on the couch wrapped in a blanket when I heard a noise. It came from beneath me. Scrape, scrape. It sounded like metal dragging against dirt. The cabin didn't have a basement, but it sat on a raised foundation with a crawlspace underneath. The access panel to the crawlspace was actually inside the cabin, located on the floor of the utility closet near the kitchen. I muted the TV. Scrape. There it was again. I grabbed a heavy flashlight and a fireplace poker. My heart was hammering in my ears as I walked to the utility closet. I opened the door and looked down. The wooden hatch on the floor was sitting crooked. Someone had moved it. I nudged the hatch open with the tip of the poker. A blast of freezing cold air hit my face. I shone the flashlight down into the darkness. At first, I just saw dirt and pipes. But then, the beam of light caught something in the far corner. It was a sleeping bag, and it was occupied. A man was lying there, curled up in a ball, staring right back at me. His skin was pale and filthy, and his eyes were completely black in the bright light. He didn't look scared. He looked angry. "Get out!" I yelled, trying to sound tougher than I felt. The man didn't speak. He just started crawling, fast. He scrambled over the dirt on all fours like an animal, heading straight for the opening where I was standing. I slammed the hatch down and dragged a heavy shelf in front of the closet door to block it. Beneath the floor, I could hear him thrashing against the wood, screaming something unintelligible. I didn't pack. I grabbed my keys and wallet and ran out the front door. The snow was deep, but I managed to get my truck started and slid my way down the mountain road until I got cell service. When the sheriff arrived, they found that the crawl space was empty. The man had busted through the lattice work on the side of the house and escaped into the woods, but they found his campsite under my floor. He had food wrappers, a knife, and a pile of photos. The photos were of me. They were taken through the windows of the cabin while I was sleeping on the first night. I haven't gone on a solo trip since, and that brings us to the end of tonight's video.